Hey guys, it's Fred. Make a short video for my channel, Fred McCoy 40. I just want to clear up a couple of things, and it's really nothing, but I do want to address it because our channels, our YouTube channels, Buford Pusser case, us looking for missing children, it's not about Sheila and I. It's not about trying to toot our own horns or trying to be something. I've seen a couple of comments on Mike Elam's page talking about experience and education, a job as a small department police chief and so forth like that. Guys, Sheila and I could make a fortune had we decided after we retired to got our private investigator license and just went into private business investigating things for people. That's not, we've been trying to retire for 8 years. We ain't got there yet. Sheila's still substitute teaching and everything else. But if we wanted to do this full time, it's no problem to do, and even made a second career out of it. That's not what we do it for. Not about money, it's not about clicks, it's not about views, it's about something Sheila and I believe in. I want to go over a couple of things here with you. I'm going to show the first 16 years of my career or so. I worked for first 10 for Pike County Sheriff's Department up in eastern Kentucky, home of the Hatfields and McCoys. And Pike County, Kentucky is the largest county in the state of Kentucky, geographically. In fact, largest county east of the Mississippi, geographically speaking, land-wise. That was my, I ain't gonna say first, because my first job was after I got out of the Marine Corps. I was auxiliary deputy sheriff for Jacksonville, Florida Sheriff's Department for a couple of years, until I returned home to Pike County in 1980, became a Pike County deputy sheriff, and left in 89, August the 7th of 89. It's not hard to Google Fred McCoy and Wimpson Daily News, Wimpson, West Virginia newspaper, go to their archives and start about 1984 and move up. But there were several cases there. Myself and my partner, Paul Hatfield, who both of us became detectives later on, and we worked on several cases. We didn't really, the names in the newspapers didn't start coming out till about 80, 84, 85, somewhere in there. But I worked 16 years, about 10 years in Pike County and 6 years in Lincoln County, Kentucky, as deputy sheriff before I took the job with Houstonville Police Department, where I was the police chief. A little small department. I've discussed that. I've never said I was the police chief in Los Angeles or somewhere. That's the thing about this Buford Pusser case. Is the sad thing is that it doesn't take a genius to figure this case out. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that they had a narrative and they went in the direction of their narrative. And that's what's so scary about that case. Insult me or anything else, but it doesn't take a genius to figure it out. You're right. Not very smart at all. I'm not very smart because I became a police officer. So many other things in life I could have done rather than been a police officer. But I wanted to help people, wanted to protect and serve. It's gone from that to anything but protecting and serving. I'm going to show you some articles here. It's not to brag about. It's what's took me so long to, even downstairs when I made the video trying to show some of the things on the walls that Mother had put up in the museum while she was still alive. And my mother was a collector. She collected enough stuff to have a museum for the family. And she was a collector of anything. She collected dolls. She collected Hatfield McCoy. She collected bells, shoes. She collected everything. You know, Mother made me several. You're going to see them as I go through this video here. I'm going to let this video start going through. But you're going to see some books in here where Mother made albums for me. And I said, Mom, don't do that. You don't have to collect that stuff. That's not that bigger deal. And she said, oh, I want to. And I was going back a couple of days ago. I'd gotten a couple of articles out of here. And I'm going to stop it on that one. I'm going to come back to it. But I'd gotten a couple articles out over the last year or so, and I went down yesterday and started taking some snapshots, just of a few of the items, and in the main back of the book, you'll see it where it's Mom, and she writes in the back of that book and says, I hope you like this, son, or something, whatever she said. And very sweet of her. I never thought it would come in handy, but I'd forgotten a lot of these stories and a lot of things that I did do in my career, and that's me off to the left there with my hand on my gun with this Marine Corps hat on that I always wear. That's my Marine Corps hat. I was a detective then. That's the local Pike County coroner there, the mortician. That's the state medical examiner with a shovel in his hand. We're actually looking for a body. Actually looking for a body of a McCoy that had been murdered years ago by a Pike County deputy sheriff who ultimately went to jail for bank robbery and murder and all kinds of different charges. But he was actually a deputy sheriff that was in uniform with coveralls on when they were robbing banks, and then he'd come through the roadblocks with his uniform on. And that's us looking for a body there. That's way back. Wimpson Daily News is where you can go to see any of these stories. Detective says files given to FBI. That's my partner there, Paul Hatfield. We were both detectives, and that's me on the side. We turned the sheriff in. There's Mother's albums, just 4 of them. I've got several down there, but she had albums on top of albums of newspaper articles that she did and kept for me when I was a police officer, and half of them I didn't even know that she even knew about. But there's the FBI agent that we went to, one of the agents, to turn the sheriff and other public officials in for public corruption. There's the girl that he got pregnant, and then he killed her. He murdered her because she was going to tell his wife, and she was going to tell the FBI. He was given 16 years in prison. He served 10, and he's out today. Mark Putnam lives in Lincolnton, Georgia, I think it is. His partner, Ron Poole, retired and lives in Lincolnton, North Carolina, if you can believe that. There he is pleading guilty in court. FBI agent plea is due in Pike Court. And Mother kept all these. These are all albums. Woman claims FBI agent killed her sister. That's when she was trying to get something done about this girl come up missing. My partner and I, detectives, had gone to the FBI, the local FBI there in Pikeville, Kentucky. Now, Pikeville, we only had 2 FBI agents. Both of them turned out to be bad agents. But we had gone to them concerning corruption in the sheriff's department, Commonwealth Attorney's office, judge's office, the jail, different things they were putting people on home incarceration, drug dealers that we were arresting and letting them stay at their house. Well, what better place for a drug dealer to be than at their house? You couldn't pay them to leave their house. That's where their business is. So they were paying the $80 a day, whatever it was, 50 to 80, for a home incarceration bracelet on their ankle to make sure they didn't leave their house. Well, they didn't want to leave their house. That's where the customers come to. But come to find out, the jail administrator and jail employees actually owned the home incarceration. Judges were given, and the judge was actually in on it with them, that he owned some of the percentage. He was putting people on home incarceration, drug dealers, instead of putting them in jail. We didn't understand that for a while. And then finally, when it all come out, we did. But this girl come up missing, and her sister was saying it was Mark Putnam. It was the FBI agent. Everybody thought that was ludicrous. What? No, this guy was professional. This guy, he's a young agent, a real good-looking guy, real well-spoken, college-educated, smart. And next thing you know, they transferred him to Miami, Florida, out of Pike County. My partner and I, we couldn't understand that because he was telling us how he was communicating with, well, in fact, we communicated with the U.S. Attorney out of Lexington, come to the Pikeville FBI office and met with us and discussed the case. And we just knew it was any time they were going to be bringing a bunch of them down. Next thing you know, he's transferred to Miami, Florida. The FBI, rather than investigating one of their agents, they transferred him to another office in Miami, Florida. And they said that this girl had run off with a bunch of drug dealers to Chicago or somewhere. And it was wrote off. He was transferred. It was over with until my partner and I finally, we had no other choice. We knew the state police was corrupt. We knew he had we had met with the state police. And the first thing one of the troopers, the detective said when he come in there, he said, my mom and dad's known Fuzzy all of his life. And our family thinks the world of him. Now, what did you guys want to tell us? Yeah, okay. So, naturally, there was nothing said there. We went to the media, ultimately. Once we went to the media, it came out. They started pursuing Mark Putnam case. The prosecutor did. He decides then, whoa, we should investigate Mark Putnam. And they did. And they found out that Mark Putnam had killed his informant. So the FBI says they're not going to pursue any case that Mark Putnam or Ron Poole had anything to do with. So we're left out in the code. Now, the state police did come in and they got a few people here and there. Several people resigned their positions. A couple of judges got convicted. A jailer, deputy jailer. There was different ones that. But and in the meantime, we did get 4 other sheriffs. I've put that story up before on our other channel. Google 4 Kentucky sheriffs arrested. Just Google 4 Kentucky sheriffs arrested. That's myself and my partner. That was people that had given us information on these other sheriffs. We really wasn't concerned about the other sheriffs. We was concerned about our sheriff that was corrupt. But in the end, they end up getting those 4 and a police chief, or at least arresting them. Let me see here. Let this continue. So going along, I got sidetracked here looking at these stories. The bottom line is here, this is just some of the, and it'll move on here in a minute. Woman says FBI agent killed her pregnant sister, and that turned out to be the truth. That was correct. I can't see the date on these. Pike Sheriff says officers filed suit for revenge. Suit for revenge, we were fired. We were fired illegally because we expressed and shown former deputies sue Sheriff Fuzzy Kazee. That's not just us. There was other deputies that also filed. Ex-Pike County deputies filed a huge lawsuit against the sheriff, Hatfield McCoy. Commonwealth attorney withdraws from the sheriff's probe. He withdrawed. He drug it out as long as he could. His name was John Paul Runyon. Right there he is. That's the same guy. When I was 20, I was about 23 years old or so. I was a young officer. And he's the one, myself and my partner, we were just deputy sheriffs then. We were not detectives, but we'd went on a complaint where this fella had beat his mother up and all these different things, and he'd hid up in the ceiling of his house, of his mother's house. And we got there, and along with other deputies, and crawled up into the attic where he was at. And he had a gun on my partner had a gun on him, and I come up to the side, and rather than shoot him, I've always talked about how probably 8 people in my career, if I wanted to, as far as been justified. That's one of my wishes, is that I never, in prayers, never had to shoot anybody. And I didn't, thank the Lord. But rather than shoot him, I pushed him down through the rafters, in between the rafters with a kick, more or less, that come around. He didn't know it was coming, and he fell between the rafters of that house and ended up in the kitchen floor. He fell through the roof, the ceiling of the kitchen, and in between 2 deputies. They arrested him. We was at the sheriff's office the next day, and we was telling the sheriff of what had taken place and all this and that, and John Paul was there, this prosecutor, Commonwealth attorney. And the Commonwealth attorney looks at me, a young officer, impressionable officer at that age, and he says, Fred, you should have went ahead and rid society of him. Rid society of him, because this old boy was a hoodlum. He was rough. He was always into something. Mean to his mother, mean to a lot of people, and I was justified in shooting him, but I didn't. And I told John Paul, the prosecutor, I said, John Paul, it's not my job to rid society of people. It's my job to bring them to jail and you to prosecute them. I grew up on Adam 12 and Chips and Starsky and Hutch and all these, and I just thought, you never seen these guys pull their guns. You never seen these guys shoot nobody. You don't have to do that all the time. And that's when I really learned his character. I learned this man's, his integrity. What kind of prosecutor would tell a young man, go ahead? I mean, he went on to say that he controls the grand jury. And that's when you learn that if you want a bologna sandwich indicted, John Paul could have indicted a bologna sandwich. If John Paul wanted to get somebody off for murder and get a no true bill at the grand jury, that was also possible. You learn those things after you start watching people. And it wasn't just him throughout life. I've seen more and more as we've gone along. Special prosecutor asked to review the investigation of Pike County. They appointed a special prosecutor, which we thought was going to be great because we asked for the guy that prosecuted the Larry Mahoney case. I'm probably going to miss it. Wilkinson clarifies statement. Wilkinson, president of Home Incarceration Program. Stan Wilkinson, president of the Home Incarceration Program of Pike County, has clarified his statement in a Story Saturday edition. Statement calling for members of the public to come forward who have paid cash to the program is misleading. Wilkinson said, everyone who is on the program pays cash. $50 hookup and $10 a day. Wilkinson said former county detectives Hatfield McCoy were probably referring to the work release program. No, we were referring to exactly what we were talking about, whatever that story was. That's November the 15th, 1989, and November the 7th, 1989. So whatever we had told the newspaper, he's probably trying to redirect there and make it look like we were talking about something else, but I think we pretty much knew what we were talking about. But there's the home incarceration. I hadn't even seen that article, so Pike County investigates continuing. Deputy jailer in Pike County arrested an escapee. A deputy jailer, that was come from there where they're covering up. I didn't even see the bottom one there. Guys, y'all can go research these if you want. Deputy jailers arrested. These are people that was letting people out of the county jail that was sentenced. Fire detectives respond. These are all, that's September the 1st of 89. Deputy jailer charged with, there were several jailers and deputy jailers that were involved. I see mothers writing in the background there. Time to speak out. There's somebody probably taken up for us because we did lose our job. We did get fired. Sheriff relieves deputies accused of cashing evidence check. This is one of the deputies that stood up at a press conference after we turned the sheriff in for corruption. And he was at a press conference and he told the newspaper that, boy, Fred and Paul, they were rough. Fred and Paul was a lot probably what they say Buford Pusser was back in the old days. If Fred and Paul, if detectives Hatfield McCoy come to arrest you, just give it up. Go to jail. It's real simple. But if you wanted to fight, then in the mountains of eastern Kentucky, if you went to arrest somebody, you better not leave without them, or you better find another job, because the next time you go after somebody, you're going to meet the same consequences. This was one of the deputies here, this John Derbyshire, that stood up and said, oh, he didn't like working with Fred and Paul. He never had a problem with it until we turned the sheriff in for corruption. And then he got Paul's car or my car, whose cruiser they got. Everybody had something to gain out of mine and Paul's salary and our cars and our offices. We were the only two detectives in the county, but this guy here, he made a big deal out of Fred and Paul, how rough we were. We had a rough job, and we did it to the best of our ability. But when we went to arrest somebody, they were going to jail with us. That's just the way it was. That's the way it is with any police officer. We never abused nobody. Later on, after we turned the sheriff in, then it came out that he had cashed I can't remember the amount, and I can't see real good here, but he had cashed a woman's Social Security check that she had gotten or something. This deputy did, and the investigators from the state police on our end that had come in to take over for the FBI, he had went and questioned them about this, and before he could go arrest them on his side, Special Investigations Unit, the regular state police, they already let him come in and plead guilty where that wouldn't be part of our investigation. It was just, the whole thing was, the state police is not credible here in Kentucky no more than the TBI is in Tennessee. Mavericks praised. The sheriff, he called us mavericks. He called us renegades. He laid us grand jury indictments, list cocaine charges. I'm not sure what this one is. I have a feeling this is probably allegedly cashed money from a $2,200 cashier's check is what that deputy sheriff cashed of that elderly woman's. I think I remember that her son had stolen the check, and he had went and recovered the check from her son, and then instead of taking it back to the mother, he took the check out and cashed it himself. The deputy did, and cashed the money. That's me undercover. That was during anywhere from 85 to 87, 88, 89. Police, sheriff, corruption investigation resumed. Investigation of sheriff, alleged murder cover-up. Arrest expected today in burglary on Blackberry Creek. This is just some of the cases that would suspect jailed in armed theft, sundry store. Deputies make another drug arrest. Hatfield McCoy disagree with Stess. Ray Stess was the head of the Kentucky Sheriff's Association. He was taken up for the sheriff. Hatfield McCoy faced the adversaries together. There we are with our documents, our tape recordings, our videotapes. Detective save files were given to the FBI. We went all the way to Miami, Florida. At this time, we still didn't know Mark Putnam. How smart are we? Somebody wants to talk about Fred McCoy and investigating in small departments. We went to an FBI agent that killed his informant, killed his girlfriend. How smart are we as police officers? Goodness sakes. We gave up our jobs and went to people that was doing worse crimes than even the sheriff, or at least the same. There we are, cleaning out our offices, cleaning out our desk when we got fired. KSP investigator probing Sheriff's Department. August the 15th, 89. KSP investigator probing, I think that's the other half of it. Probably up there backwards. You probably have to read it the other way. Another former employee accuses sheriff of withholding warrants. This is not me and my partner. This is another deputy sheriff or three. Fred McCoy and Paul Hatfield. There we are at our press conference when we disclosed. That day we gave up our jobs. We knew when we held that press conference we were fired. We knew we had given up our careers. Check of warrants raises questions. This is where we had tape recordings of the sheriff telling us, don't arrest, don't serve these warrants on his friends, on these drug dealers, don't serve them, hold these warrants. And then he would tell us on people that had voted against him or hauled voters or something, get them SOBs and so forth like that. And it just wasn't the way that criminal justice system was meant to be. Well, a reporter, they kept wanting stuff from us. Can you show us anything? Because we were holding everything for court. And we gave one of them, we just pulled out a tape, and the tape happened to be where the sheriff's telling us not to arrest a certain drug dealer, a big-time drug dealer in the county, a rich drug dealer. And we gave him that tape. We let him make a copy of it on his recorder. And he goes to the sheriff's office and he interviews the sheriff. And he says, Sheriff, what about these detectives saying that you told them not to arrest certain drug dealers on warrants? Oh, that's a bunch of baloney. That's not true. They're disgruntled. They're this and that. And he says, really? And he says, yeah. And he lets the sheriff put his foot in his mouth. And then he said, well, can I let you hear something? He said, yeah. And he plays that tape. And it says, and it's fuzzy on there, the sheriff telling us not to arrest that certain drug dealer, that rich drug dealer that contributes to his campaign, that also gets a kickback from dealing drugs. And all the sheriff says after he plays it, and he said, what do you say to that, Sheriff? And instead of him going on and defending like he was all that, it was all made up and we're disgruntled, he said, blank, that happens all the time. It was so well known, the corruption in Pike County where I was from. 2 more disgruntled employees. Now, this is 2 more deputy sheriffs that come out after we did, and the sheriff called them disgruntled. They're coming up with corruption. They're showing files. They're showing warrants. But yet we were disgruntled along with all these other deputy sheriffs. State police will investigate detectives' allegations. Sheriff vowed to continue efforts to halt rash of robberies and burglaries in the area recently because he named deputies Paul Hetfield and Fred McCoy as special investigators into thefts of Belfry and South Williamson. Warned potential robbers, no matter how long it takes the deputies, they will stick with it until the suspects are apprehended. He also says in there that detectives Hatfield and McCoy have solved cases that other agencies had turned away from and given up on, and he was right. This was one of those cases that the state police actually worked, and they couldn't solve it, and Paul and I come up and solved the case a year or so after it was a cold case. 2 jailed, 3rd assault, and theft of night deposit. I think that's the complete story there. Bank robbers, loot, still missing. Robbers strike South Williamson branch. That's the one where the deputy sheriff had a Pike County deputy sheriff that robbed that bank right there. And when he come through the roadblock, he had the 2 of his bank robber accomplices in the toolbox in the back of his truck. He was a special deputy. He wasn't paid. He just wanted that position for whatever benefits it brought, which one was robbing banks and getting away with it. He wore coveralls to the bank robbery, and then when he come out and they would trade cars, he would take his coveralls off, throw them in the toolbox along with his 2 accomplices, along with the money, and then he would be in his uniform. And he would come through the roadblocks wherever they might be at in uniform and say, "Where do you all want me to set up at? Where do you want me to go?" And he drives right through the roadblock with the bank robbers in the toolbox in the back of his truck. Go figure. Maverick detectives still on the job. I can't see the date on this, but it wasn't within 3 days, because within 3 days, we turned the sheriff in on August the 7th, 1989, and on August the 10th, 1989, we were fired. We lasted 3 more days than I actually thought we would. I figured he'd fire us that same day, but he was trying to do it in a manner to make it look like it wasn't dealing with his corruption. Oh, there it is. That's probably the article there. August the 8th. That's the next day. We turned him in August the 7th. A small mafia. Detectives level a list of charges versus Kazee. That's myself and my partner up there. There's myself and my partner. Deputies charged Kazee with corruption in office. Had convicted felons carrying guns, carrying badges. Pike Sheriff's Office corrupt, detectives say. Pike detectives. Until we made detectives, that's when we really seen what was really going on. And we would arrest these people on drug charges, and they would tell us, "You should go get your boss. Your boss is the one that's protecting us. Your boss, ex-Pike County deputy under investigation for theft." I think that's the one that stole the Social Security check. And then when we start looking around, we start seeing that the sheriff, and then it come down to the point, Pike detectives accused sheriff of corruption. We went to Lexington, Kentucky, and rented a hotel room to hold our press conference in. Kazee infuriated by McCoy's allegation. That's not this McCoy. That was a fellow named John P. McCoy. No relation to me. And there's McCoy's wife and son are indicted in Pike County. That's John P. McCoy's wife and son. John P. McCoy was one of the bank robbers and one of the counterfeiters that was hooked up with the deputy that was helping to rob the banks on the other side. And that's his wife and son. Again, Pike County, Kentucky is full of Hatfields and McCoys. So when you see these names, it's a common name where I grew up, where I'm from. It doesn't mean we're related, but I'd imagine somewhere down the line. But robbers hit bank for $50,000. McCoy feat to be repeated. I broke a world record back then. That may be what that meant. Robbers hit bank for $50,000. Search underway for McCoy. This is another McCoy, Clyde McCoy. Down below, there's Harold Booney Runyon. And that was the deputy sheriff. That was robbing banks. That was the deputy sheriff that killed Clyde McCoy. We made big news arresting that one there. That was back in the early days when AIDS first came out. Oprah Winfrey come up there. This guy, I'd arrested him, well, myself and my partner, and he had spit on us and different things. We had to fight with him, and he spit on us and tried to bite us. And so where AIDS had just come out during that year, that must have been around 86, 85, somewhere in there. And Oprah had come up there and done a story where they had actually drained the swimming pool because somebody had went swimming in the pool, and it was known that they had AIDS. And she wanted myself and my partner, we didn't do it, but she wanted us to be on the Oprah Winfrey show to talk about us arresting this guy. Deputy raids, lookout man arrested for bootlegging charges. 19 were arrested. This is myself and my partner. We were the two drug officers. We were the two undercover guys. 9 held in the latest drug arrest by deputies. 15 arrested, 4 booked in a drug raid. And we made more drug arrests in the 3.5, 4 years that we worked undercover in Pikeville than's ever been made in that county before or after. We made over 500 drug arrests in those 3.5 years on just drugs itself. 2 jail following scuffle. That's probably people that's fighting. Father and son arrested for felony charges. I can't see these stories, guys. You might be able to see them if you're even interested. Son turns in fighting parents. McCoy's wife and son are jailed in mine theft. They stole some mining equipment. That's the same John P. McCoy we were talking. He's in jail today. He's still in prison today. John P. McCoy is. Just go to your federal court, Google federal inmates, Google John P. McCoy, and he'll come up. He's somewhere in a federal prison. This one here, from what I understand, former deputy faces life in prison. Well, he may have faced it, but I seen a while back where Booney Runyon actually is out of jail now. Runyon sent to jail for a life term. Sure he did. Judge orders $540,000 in restitution. This was the Pike County deputy sheriff. This is one of the officers that we turned in when we held our press conference and that we'd gone to the FBI on. And he ultimately went to jail for murder and bank robbery. But I seen a while back, Google federal inmates, Harold Booney Runyon, and it will show that he's released. So he's now out of jail. That was a deputy sheriff. Armed man robs a drugstore, drug arrest. All these is something Mom has kept. 2 indicted in grocery store. My mother, anything that I was involved in, my mother, 3 New Year's burglaries noted, bail-free anti-rape class. We used to teach, Sheila and I did rape prevention classes when we taught karate back home, 7 charge. We used to teach martial arts, Sheila and I did. 2 Phelps men arrested, drugs. Dotson denies charge. Can't see all those names. There's John P. McCoy. That's the guy. He's in prison today. He's an old man now. He's about 80 years old by now. But he's the one that had, we solved this bank robbery, myself and my partner did. And we went there on a burglary. They reported a bunch of laser printers stolen office equipment because he'd been counterfeiting on them. And anyway, we solved that case, and in solving that case, we went and got a search warrant. We got a hold of Mark Putnam. That's back before he'd killed anybody. And the FBI agent, he got a hold of FBI agent John Stalls out of West Virginia where the banks were robbed. And they met us there and had a little hole out in the garage. And while we were searching, I seen this little piece of board pushed back. And I said, guys, somebody hold me up there. We couldn't find a ladder. And I was a little fella then. I didn't weigh. That's before I got into Sheila's cooking real good, but I didn't have this pot belly. And they threw me up in that little hole, and I stick my head up in there and look, and here's these masks and gloves and the money bag from the banks that had been robbed, toboggans with their eyes cut out and stuff. That's when they uncovered the bank robbery. And, of course, we gave it to the FBI, and they thanked us for it. We've got letters of accommodation from the FBI when we done that, and Paul and I never cared. We never cared who got credit for crimes or arrest. It just wasn't us. We wanted the drugs off the street. We wanted the kids to quit overdosing. That was our goal. Father says he's puzzled about a kidnapping. There's a little girl behind that paper there that 2 men indicted for robbery of arrest of a restaurant. Undercover officers, jail, Ohio. Ex-employee jailed. Again, 17 arrests in drug sweeps. Some of you may not even be in. I'm just letting these go. They shouldn't be very many more of them. Pike deputies jail for pike theft, the insurance scam. So for these people that say, Fred, thousands in illegal drugs and pills grabbed in the raid, of course we did. Kazee announces promotion to detectives. We were doing so good back then, and in order to look good, the people were so happy of Pike County when Paul and I were arresting these drug dealers that had been in business for years and years. Pretty much like Buford Pusser on the state line there. It reminds me a little bit of that, because these people had been allowed to sell and deal for years and years, and nobody had ever bothered them until my partner right there and I come forward, let the hair grow, let the beards grow, and pierced their ears and everything else that you could do to look like a druggie. And we would make these arrests, and we were doing so good. And the sheriff, in the fact that we were doing so good and the fact that he wanted to look good, promoted us to detectives. We were the only 2 detectives on the Pike County Sheriff's Department at the time. And that it was then that it starts coming to light that when we started getting some of the bigger ups. We've been getting smaller ones. And as we started getting these higher up ones, the bigger dealers, they would tell us, they'd say, why don't you go get this one, or I'll give you this one if you'll let me have a lesser charge, and so forth. And we started wheeling and dealing. We were starting to get some big people. When we started getting the big ones, then they started rolling over on the sheriff and other people that was attorneys and different people making them deals that was tied right in with them for nothing more than campaign. Deputy jailer Pike is arrested for forgery of the jail records. This all stems from 2 deputies named to probe latest rash of burglaries. You know, it was funny, guys. At one time, the sheriff couldn't praise us enough. At one time, he couldn't praise us enough in the newspapers when we were solving some of these cold cases, when we were doing all these things. But when we started getting his drug dealers, I see one of them right there, Johnny Brizendine. I see it from Freeburn, Kentucky. Arrested him. And it was just, these are some of the people that he's on tape telling us not to arrest him. When we went to get Johnny, he actually called the deputy that was in charge over in that area. And the deputy that was in charge in the Phelps, Freeburn area took money out of his pocket while we had him in the back seat of the car arresting him on a drug raid and gave him money to bond out with. The chief deputy in that area. If that doesn't tell you what we worked for, MA AIDS test negative. That's another one, I guess, or it could be the same one that we had earlier, dealing with AIDS up there. AIDS was a big thing back when it first came out. Naugatuck man faces 4 charges, 23 indicted. A lot of the indictments back in that day was from Paul and I. K-9 unit to be added in Pike County. My brother was the first K-9 officer ever in Pike County Sheriff's Department. He's also a retired police officer now. 3 jailed. Woman shot and told her incident. I was pursuing a guy from Kentucky to West Virginia one night. And in that car there was a 67 Thunderbird. This doctor owned it. And we went around a curve there. I'm in pursuit from Kentucky. I'm over in West Virginia at this time. And he went through the side of that garage and he tore that poor old doctor's car. That was a collectible car. And he went through the side of that garage. And then he took off on foot. I ain't never run so hard in my life because I knew after he done the damage he done, I had to catch him. I couldn't just let him go and me left holding the bag. I called him. 14 arrested, undercover work by Pike deputies. 2 more charged with drug dealing. So for all those people, I don't want to brag. Toller man faces 17 drug charges. Another drug arrest made by deputies. McCoy wins honor. I shot the high score in the police academy in my class. 24 dope arrests pushed deputies to over 133 arrests. Deputies make another drug arrest. Man charged in selling dope to deputies. We were undercover. Yeah, in police academy in both Florida and Kentucky, I took the firearms award for shooting the high score. Now, Florida, I was just a deputy sheriff. I was a auxiliary. I was a 4-wheel drive. It was beach patrol or 4-wheel drive posse, they called it. You was a special deputy, but you still had to go to a small police academy just to get certified to carry a gun. Drug and booze arrest total 100. I don't have the date there. Again, you can, Wimpson Daily News, Pikeville News Express, 24 dope arrests push deputies to 133, intensifies. Father says he's puzzled by attempted kidnapping. There's a little 9-year-old girl that they were trying to kidnap out of a window. Let me stop it right here. This is the main back of that book. The main back. Hope you enjoy this book. I love you, Mom. That was my mother. I don't know if you can see it or not. I'll try to get in front of the camera here. I ain't gonna be able to do it. I've got a tattoo on my arm that says, Mama's Boy. Me and my mama was close. Mama's boy. I was a mama's boy. In fact, if you'll go to my Facebook page, you'll see a video when she got Alzheimer's, and we kept her the last 5 years of her life. She said my sister was aggravating me. She said, Fred's a mama's boy, Fred. And she said, Fred ain't no mama's boy. She didn't like people to be insulted or made fun of. She thought she was making fun of me, a mama's boy. And you have to watch the video. But my mother made me these albums. And like I said, she's got a whole collection. She's got stuff over there of hers that we've never even gone through. And in God we trust, all others pay cash. That was at a dope dealer's house. That was at a dope dealer. Here's a firearms course that Sheila and I, both of us are firearms instructors. Guys, I didn't show you this trying to toot my own horn, trying to show off. If I did, I can go down there and get about 4 more of these albums that my mother kept. This was just Pike County. This is not Lincoln County. This is not all the years at Houstonville. All the years I was at Houstonville, even when I wasn't the police chief there, even when I worked for the sheriff's department, we still lived in Houstonville, and I still took care and policed for the city of Houstonville anytime the police chief wasn't there or something like that. We lived there. That was my community, our city. We loved it. Good little community, good bunch of people. I didn't show you this to toot my own horn. I showed you this to show you that even though the last years of my career, I was laid back. I tried to I didn't want to work with a bunch of different officers. I didn't want to have to try to keep officers. I went on a call one night and it'll haunt me for the rest of my life. But I went on a pursuit. They called in from another county and they were pursuing. And when I got there, they had just stopped the guy. And I've never seen a beat down like that in my life. But what do you do? There was like 13 of them there, police officers and me. And I done turned in sheriffs. I've done turned in prosecutors. I realized that what do you do in life? But I'll always regret that because it wasn't whether it had anything to do with the way they treated him that night, because I went ahead, they had him apprehended. I went ahead and left. But it was just, I could tell that they all they had to do was arrest them and put them in their car. Now, what I consider to be abuse, it may not be abuse to others, but I don't think it takes that many officers to arrest somebody and that you have to do a beat down on them. You arrest them and take them to jail. And that's just some of the stories. As you're an officer, you get tired of seeing different things. Now, listen, I would fight as long as they wanted to fight. If you think I'm sitting here telling you Fred McCoy didn't fight, or Fred McCoy didn't get complaints, or Fred McCoy didn't have to use force to effect an arrest, that's not what I'm telling you. I'm telling you that I would use whatever force was allowed to me to effect the arrest. Once the person was arrested, I took them to jail. I didn't very seldom handcuff people. I found out it was harder to handcuff people than it was just to open the door and say, get your butt in there. And they would get in the car. You try to handcuff people, you're going to have to fight. Now, if you want to fight, just pull out your handcuffs and say, hey, put your hands behind your back, because they're going to fight with you. If you don't want to fight, just say, get in the car. It's just the way it is. Some people just don't want handcuffs on, and some people's going to fight you no matter if you're going to put cuffs on them or not. That's just a given. Tried to do a good job as a police officer, and turned out to be a pretty good investigator over the years. This has been a whole lot longer video than I thought it would be. But this is why I do the videos on Buford Pusser. This is why I do justice for anybody that's been done wrong, especially dead people, especially people that's been falsely accused. That's what we try to do, Sheila and I. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's enlightened you a little bit. You don't have to look through these. Just go to Wimpson Daily News, Wimpson, West Virginia, archives or old newspapers, and start about 1983, 84, somewhere in there, and you'll see Fred McCoy in there, Paul Hatfield. You'll see all kinds of stories. You'll see where we used to teach karate classes, where we used to have karate fights, where we used to promote full contact karate, where I used to fight. All kinds of stories. Thanks for joining me, guys. Catch you next time.